Welcome to the Let's Talk Growth podcast, where we focus on the topics that can help companies unlock their growth potential. Now here's your host, Bill Hupp.
Welcome to the Let's Talk Growth podcast, your go-to source for marketing expertise. I'm Bill Hupp, joined today by the founder and president of MarketWise Advising, Mike Haldane. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Bill. It's really nice to be working with you again.
Absolutely. We were former colleagues, and now we're reunited to do this podcast and share your marketing expertise with the world. And let's start with MarketWise. When and why did you launch this company?
So this has been something that I've been thinking about for a very long time. And, I'm a few decades in at this point from a career standpoint. And I've been thinking a lot lately about, all right, how do I want to spend the last trimester of my career? And what I've decided is that I want to take all of the key learnings that I've had and start to share those with the folks that are coming up behind me. And so I've been thinking about a lot of things, one of which is this business, MarketWise, but also there's some teaching that I want to do. And part of that will be covered with MarketWise, but also there is quite a bit of writing that I want to do. And so I've started with the draft of a book, and I've written a number of white papers, but it's all of those things that I wanted to communicate. I just felt like this consulting business would be a really good way to get my message out and get some of those learnings out to the folks that I think could benefit from hearing it.
So, Mike, what will MarketWise do?
So we are going to be focused on helping companies that want to grow do just that. And so the pillars of activity, if you will, are around market research, strategic planning, and help with execution, all three of which I think have been lacking in a lot of ways for a lot of companies, not because they don't want to do those things, but oftentimes it's because they either don't have the internal knowledge or they just don't have the bandwidth to be able to pull it off. So our plan is to help augment some of that activity. And for the most part, it starts with what I'm calling a growth readiness assessment. That's something that we've built out over the course of the past couple of months. And really that is a way to sort of come in at the very bottom level and say, okay, what are all the things that are working well and not working well from the standpoint of setting the company up to be in a position to be able to grow. So it's an assessment that we do cross-functionally. So there are interviews that we do with key stakeholders within the company. We do, one-on-one interviews. These are not group interviews. And then after all of those are done, we take all of the data that we collect and we put it together in the form of a report. And then we present that report to the leadership team within a given company. And what that does is help us have a really meaningful discussion around what's going well, what's not going well, where the gaps are, where the hurdles are, and that helps us assemble a plan as to what we want to go do first, second, and third. So that could be research, it could be help with strategic planning, it could be help with execution, or it could be a fractional role. A lot of companies are looking at fractional roles now where they maybe have the need for expertise, but they don't have a full-time need, and so they're looking to hire somebody to come in for a couple of days a week or something along those lines. And so that will be one of the services that we'll offer as well.
When do you plan to launch MarketWise?
So we are pulling together all of the ingredients that we need to launch now, and we've been working on this for a few months. And the plan at this point is to launch in the early part of 2024.
And what types of customers do you plan to serve?
So really, it's customers coming from a wide variety of industries, and some of them will be large, some of them will not be as large. Some of them are going to be startup type companies or companies that are maybe a few years in but are looking for ways to grow. Really, the key is that they have an interest in growing but are struggling to figure out how to put a strategy in place to actually make that happen.
What do you think having a poor marketing strategy does to a company? How harmful is that to a company?
Well, when I think of strategy, I think of what I consider to be big M marketing, meaning it's everything related to the product, to the price, to the channel, and to the promotion. And the promotion part is what a lot of people think about when they think about marketing, but I think of it as a much bigger problem to solve than that. So what I would say is that the marketing strategy, to the extent that it's missing, it typically means that, and I'm talking about the promotion part at the moment, it typically means that the brand isn't well defined, the message isn't well defined, how we're going to communicate that message may need some work. Um, we're not actively pursuing a campaign around awareness, credibility, lead generation. So the impact that that has is that, the market for whatever company we're talking about doesn't really understand what the company does. And that tends to be one of the reasons that companies or products fail, is because the message isn't clear and it's not getting to the right people, or at least not soon enough. From a big marketing standpoint, everything has to be right. And that's really where MarketWise is focused. So, product management is a big part of what we do. So understanding the needs of the market, understanding what the requirements are in terms of the product or the service that's being launched, understanding where the price point needs to be and whatever sensitivity might be around that, and those types of things, beyond just the promotion part of marketing.
Well, speaking of credibility, I'm sure there are some listeners out there who are wondering about you and your expertise. So let's talk about you personally, Mike. What is your career background?
So my career background started, way back when, several decades ago, but it's always been in the commercial space. So I started out with a sales position with Maytag, and did that for a while, and then actually joined a family business, and we were putting together CAD workstations and servers and networks and that sort of thing. So that kind of launched me into the technology space. And along the way, I went off and did an MBA, and then ultimately joined Intel as a product marketing engineer. And I worked for a little while on the launch of the Intel Pentium 2 processor, and then was asked to come up with creative ways to serve our channel. And so we came up with and tested and launched a product called Intel and Business Remote Services Center, which was kind of the first or a first version of the ability to remotely service customers from an IT perspective. We gave that capability to our channel so that they could serve the needs of smaller businesses that didn't have an IT department. Could be a law firm or a medical office, an accounting firm, and those types of folks. And then from there, I went to a marketing position at iMation, which was a 3M spinoff, and there I worked in business development and in product marketing. And from there, I went to 3M and worked as a business manager and as a marketing person. I worked as a Six Sigma black belt and a coach, and worked on products that were for healthcare, as well as for industrial applications. And then after a number of years there, I went to a company called Provation, and Provation was in the healthcare space as well. And there we were doing clinical documentation for hospitals and for physicians in private practice and that sort of thing. I started in sales operations, and from there I went into the role of marketing, where I managed all things marketing within the company, and then ultimately made my way into the corner office as the vice president and GM of the business. And then shortly after that, I went to work for a company called GTT, Global Traffic Technologies, and there I was the VP of marketing. Was there for 6 or 7 years, and again, we did some interesting things like launching something we called Priority Control as a Service, which was an as a service business. Was wildly successful and started to generate a significant amount of recurring revenue for the company. And after that, I joined a company called CalSense, and CalSense is in the smart irrigation space. So CalSense sells to cities and counties and departments of transportation and homeowners associations and Disneyland, and lots of companies and organizations that are kind of along those lines. And basically what CalSense does is it provides smart irrigation control. So everything is cloud-based and everything is centralized, and it gives customers the ability to use weather to determine the optimal schedule for irrigation along roadways and in parks and on university campuses and that sort of thing. And after CalSense, I started working on getting ready to launch MarketWise. And as we talked about a few minutes ago, that is expected to launch in the first part of 2024.
As far as this podcast, the Let's Talk Growth podcast goes, what are you hoping to accomplish? How does a podcast fit into your vision for MarketWise?
Well, as I said at the beginning of our discussion, I'm really focused on kind of three areas, and I'm trying to accomplish that with MarketWise and some other activity as well. But it's really focused around coaching or consulting, and other forms of education, and then the writing part. So again, I want to spend some time in the classroom. I want to spend some time consulting, and I want to spend some time writing. So I'm pursuing all three of those avenues currently. And the podcast is just simply one way, with the education pillar in mind, to communicate the message or set of messages that I want to communicate. So, a lot of what you'll find on the podcast is also going to be in writing in the form of a white paper, or, could be in the form of a workshop that I would be providing to a client. In that case, it would be at a deeper level. But the idea is to get the message out with as many vehicles as I can, so that the education could be as complete as it can be.
What types of content do you hope to share, and how often do you plan to publish new content?
So to start, I'm expecting that the content will be published pretty regularly, maybe every couple of weeks or at least every month. And the reason I say that is because there is a lot that I've got in mind that I want to cover, and I'm trying to do it in a way that is digestible. So, we're doing these podcasts kind of one at a time. But yeah, I want to cover not just, why we're doing what we're doing and, that sort of thing, but I want to dive deep into things like market research and how to build an effective strategy and how to execute flawlessly. In addition to, being able to bring in customers so that they can share their stories, so that we've got additional perspective. And in addition to that, I want to bring in other experts that have experience in certain areas that I think are valuable for the audience. And a lot of these folks will be people that I'm actually working with on projects, people that I'm bringing in that I know have expertise in certain areas. They'll be members of the podcast community as well.
So you're planning to leverage your extensive network and years of experience to tell stories, right? Because that's ultimately the vehicle for a podcast is storytelling. So that's going to be fascinating, and that should lead to some really interesting conversations.
That is the hope, and that is the plan. So yeah, over the course of 30 plus years, I've accumulated a pretty broad network, and within that network, there are lots of people that I've worked with that are just stellar in terms of what they do, and so those are the folks that I plan to bring in to the projects that we'll be executing. And again, I want those experts to also be on the podcast, and then likewise, I want our clients to be able to come on and talk about what they've done and share what's worked with the community, so that others can hear that and say, hey, there's some really good ideas there, and I think some of those apply to my business as well.
Yeah, because ultimately marketing it's not a one size fits all approach, and the size and complexity of your company, the industry, the business, there are a lot of factors that determine what will be successful for your particular marketing approach, right?
Right, that's exactly right. And again, I'm not thinking about it from a small end marketing perspective where we're just talking about promotion. I'm thinking about it from a broad perspective where, it's really, I think about it from an overall commercial standpoint. So, it's product management, it's pricing, it's channel, it's the sales team, it's making sure that all the incentives are in place, it's making sure that we're executing to a strategy and that the strategy is based on good, solid, unbiased market research. And that all the assumptions have been vetted so that we're not surprised in the 11th hour. So it's really, from soup to nuts, what does it take to launch a business, launch a product, and ensure that it's going to be successful and hit the milestones from a top line revenue perspective that everybody expects. It's really about making sure that we've addressed each and every component of success that either makes that happen or doesn't make it happen. And there are plenty of stories of situations where it wasn't done well and the end result didn't go well either. And this is really all about trying to make sure that that's not the case, that we've done all the homework, that we've researched everything that needs to be researched, we've documented our assumptions, and we've validated everything as we go so that we can ensure the best chance of success possible.
Well, I think your viewpoint, Mike, is going to be a really fascinating one to share with our audience, because I think very often marketing just kind of gets put into this sort of box, this very narrow box that of how people think of it. And you very much look at it in terms of its connection to sales and the larger sort of business picture overall. And that's really what companies have to do.
It's a really great observation, Bill. And to me, just based on my experience, that's the only way this works. If you have silos set up where you've got product management and product development doing one thing, and you have the sales team doing something else, and you have the marketing team doing a third set of activity, and those pieces aren't connected in a way that's cohesive and all in line with a commercial strategy, it's never going to succeed. And I've seen plenty of examples of sales and marketing in particular, but also marketing and the product development or product management function where they're just not connected. And so what happens is you build these silos and they start to point fingers at each other, and then in the end, product doesn't get built right, it's not messaged right, it doesn't get sold, and people wonder what happened and why things went wrong. Well, the reason is because there wasn't a good strategy, it wasn't well understood, people didn't understand their roles, and there wasn't good collaboration within the organization. And so those are all the things that we'll be looking at. And it's not to say that people are intentionally trying to not do things correctly. It's just that sometimes there's a lack of knowledge, a lack of expertise, or it could be that there's a component of the culture that isn't quite working right. So we'll be looking at all of those things, because in the end, what we're trying to do is to ensure that our clients are set up to succeed. And it's both from the standpoint of the success of the business or the product or the service, but also the team as a whole. A big part of this is ensuring that the team knows what they're supposed to be doing. It's very similar to a football game. We know that we're trying to score touchdowns and prevent the opposing team from scoring touchdowns, but the question becomes, how are we going to do that? In other words, what's the strategy, and what are the roles of the various people on the field? What position are they playing? What are the plays? It's really a lot the same when you think about how to succeed with a commercial business that is trying to grow. And so, those same lessons can be applied to what we're going to be talking about with our clients.
Well, it should lead to some really fascinating conversations in the future, Mike. But in the meantime, thanks for coming on the Let's Talk Growth podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Bill. And again, it's really great to be working with you again.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Let's Talk Growth. If you enjoyed it, feel free to rate and review the podcast. You can get new episodes and listen to old ones by visiting marketwiseadvising.com/podcasts. Let's Talk Growth is owned, produced, and published by MarketWise Advising, LLC.